Second Book of Kings, chapters 5 to 7 today, and we open this with the commander of the army of Aram, who is one of Israel's neighbours, I believe. And this is a chap called Naaman, and apparently, by all accounts, he's a great military leader. He's in favour with the king. He seems like a pretty top dude, but he has leprosy. So we have our first biblical introduction to leprosy. I think that's the first one, certainly with that word. News has reached the ears of Naaman anyway that Israel has a prophet, and he wants to go and see this prophet to go and see about getting himself cured. He goes to the king of Aram, who is not named, and he goes with the king's blessing to the king of Israel, who is not named. It's really irritating as to which one it is. Is it one of Judah? Is it West? Whatever. And Aram, the king of Aram, sends lots of gifts and a letter as well to the king of Israel saying basically, here's my dude, can you cure him? This letter reaches the king of Israel, who tears his clothes and he's in despair because he's so, how am I supposed to do this? And he seems to interpret it as the king of Aram trying to pick fights with him. So that's not obvious that that's what's happening. It seems the opposite is what's happening, but never mind. Elisha, anyway, is kicking around still and hears that the king is in despair and decides he's going to go and help. So he comes to the king, then goes off to go and see Naaman and says, okay, what you need to do, you need to go down to the River Jordan and wash yourself 7 times and then all is good. You'd think Naaman, given he was looking for his prophet type dude, would be pleased. But no, he's quite miffed that it's like he wanted an abracadabra type cure to his thing, and so goes off in a huff. Very odd. He's persuaded anyway to do as he was told and goes down to the Jordan to wash 7 times, and that's it, the leprosy goes. This seems to go very well for him, and he then sort of converts to accept that the God of Israel is God. Sort of happy ending there, I think, for Naaman. But for Elisha's servant, however, he then goes and tries to extort some money out of Naaman for getting his cure, or rather does extort it. Then gets found out, and his punishment is that he then gets leprosy. So, yeah, don't use God as your side hustle, basically. I guess that's probably the moral of the story there. We then have a random miracle where there are some people using axes to chop some stuff near to the River Jordan, and the axe head flies off and drops into the River Jordan. There's some big commotion about this because, it's a borrowed axe, this is terrible. But Elisha comes along and, don't worry, all is cool. Where did it go in? He points out where it goes in. Elisha then gets a stick, throws it where the axe head went in, and this seems to make the axe head then float, and it can then be recovered. So, yeah, weird, random, but there we go. It then cuts to talk about Israel and Aram are now at war. Presumably not because of the misunderstanding, but maybe. That's how these things seem to go. And the king of Aram sends a load of soldiers to go and get Elisha and take him back there. So they surround the city he's in. But Elisha prays to God for these people to all be blinded, and then, which happens, and then somehow leads them all to Samaria to hand them over to the Israelites, seemingly with the idea that assumption that they would all be killed. To be fair, that would be the norm, I think, for what we would expect to happen. But no, God says feed them and send them home, despite the fact they're at war and don't know. All fine anyway. We're then told that sometime later, Ben-Hadad, being the king of Aram, who I thought was dead, but obviously there's some time messing about going on here, he lays siege to the city of Samaria. And it sounds like this goes on to such an extent that it causes inflation and a famine. It even notes that a donkey's head costs 920 grams of silver. Not sure what you're supposed to do with a donkey's head, but never mind. There are even then accounts of women eating their own and other people's children. Elisha gets the blame for this, and we're left at the end of this section on a bunch of soldiers going to go and lop his head off. We shall find out in the next video if that's what happens. In the short version of that anyway, we have Aram and Israel fall out for seemingly no obvious reason. We have another weird miracle. Fair to say, they're all weird, aren't they? Otherwise they're not miracles. And Elisha is in a lot of trouble. We're going to have to find out if that works out okay for him. In terms of the interesting points to come out of that, I quite like that Naaman has made my objection that how come it's not an objection, made my point that I've raised that why are all miracles needing some sort of input first? He wants his abracadabra and just turn up and just go, poof, it's done. It doesn't happen. I know I've talked about this a lot, but I'm sort of stuck with it. And I don't know if it's a story device because it's more interesting if someone does something or what. I'm not making any progress on that really, I guess, in terms of why that might be. The second point is, I've also mentioned before, is how come Elisha is so magic? I mean, he's doing more than Moses. It's crazy. And I can't help but wonder, is it an author who's taken what's happened before and just think, I'm going to up the game? It's like Rian Johnson getting Star Wars and going, I'm going to go off in this direction and just annoy everybody. Is it another writer's going, okay, we need some more magic going on this, so we're just going to get the typewriter out and start escalating things? And I mean, I think it's a reasonable question. I'm not that cynical, but it is a reasonable question, I think, and it's something we're going to have to figure out as we go, I suppose. But yeah, so that's that bit, and next week we'll find out what happens to Elisha.